Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. Last week was a big one for American agriculture. We had severe weather across many parts of the country. The traders are looking ahead to Monday's quarterly grain stocks and acreage reports, and we had bombs in the Middle East once again adding value to energy products and therefore fertilizer. Joining me now to break down that market is Josh Linville. He serves as the Vice President of Fertilizer with StoneX. And Josh, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Absolutely. Happy to do so.
So here in the past week, we saw American bombs hit nuclear facilities across the country of Iran. Josh, that drove oil prices crazy for a time. Fill us in on what it did to nitrogen urea prices here from that region.
Same thing. As it always tends to be, fertilizer is never kind of on the forefront of the news cycle, but it was definitely a part of it. We saw Iran, because of the fighting back and forth, shut down their gas production, which, of course, you don't have gas production, you're not making nitrogen fertilizer. They were last year the third largest urea exporter in the world. Same thing, Egypt. A lot of people have asked me, well, why are you talking about Egypt? They don't have anything to do with this. Well, Egypt is very dependent on Israeli-produced gas. And same thing, Iran was a little more indiscriminate in their attacks. They just launched hundreds of rockets and hope they hit. Israel had to shut down their gas production. As a result, Egypt shut down. They were number 4 last year. And it really came to a head when the U.S. struck. We did that kind of thing that nobody thought we would do. And suddenly Iran started talking about the one thing that keeps me up at night, the one thing that scares me the most, shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. You think about the millions upon millions of tons of urea that work through that waterway. That was a very big fear. Fortunately, a lot of those stories calmed down. That's no longer in the cards. Things have been correcting, but it shows you how important that waterway is.
It does indeed. And of course, that is what connects the Persian Gulf to the Indian Ocean, Josh, as I understand. And that's where, as you mentioned, the bulk of energy and fertilizer shipments have to traverse. So we saw price levels explode. Have they since come back like we've seen on the crude oil front?
They have, but not quite to the lows that we were at before the fighting began. If you look at NOLA urea barges, now keep in mind these values are in the Gulf. These are down New Orleans, Louisiana. These are sitting on barges. So it's a vastly different price than what you're going to see locally. But just to give you some context, that price went from a 345, the lowest barge that we saw trade. It jumped up into the 450s, and since then it's fallen back to 385. So we've given up a lot of that premium we baked into it, but we're still a decent premium to where we were previously. It's taking some time for this thing to calm down.
And Josh, as you look forward, of course, now it seems as we've got at least a tentative ceasefire there between Iran and Israel. If it holds, would you expect urea prices to come down further, or are we looking at elevated values at least through this harvest?
I am really hopeful we're going to see prices start to correct a little bit lower. We do have to bear in mind it's late June. We've got a lot of time ahead of us before we have to worry about spring season. That's a long time here in the next couple of months where demand can completely fall away. But we do have an India tender where they're looking for 2 million ton. That's going to create some excitement in the world market. And we also have to think about the production supply issues that we have. The Iran, Egypt is just the icing on the cake. China is still half of what their exports normally are. European production is still 75% of normal. The global S&D of urea is still extremely tight. So a lot of people are hoping we'll get prices back down to last summer's low with the grain prices where they're at. Unfortunately, today it's really hard to see that route.
If we've got growers out there who have access to fall pricing programs already, Josh, is it time to maybe get some locked in, or do you want to just wait?
I think we probably need to be looking at least a layer of it. And that needs to be a conversation with your supplier. I don't think that's a good decision we can just make on our own. I think we need to talk to our local supplier. What do you see? What do inventories look like? What do you think of the values? We're a very big proponent. Go talk to that supplier. Most of them are there to help you, not just try to sell you something. We have seen some of these summer fill, fall prepay programs come out. We would have very much liked to have seen them cheaper priced, especially with corn seeming to fall by the day. But given the global situations, it's not surprising where they came out.
All right, we'll continue to watch this volatile fertilizer market as we get deeper into summer and then eventually back to fall. Josh Linville, Vice President of Fertilizer with StoneX, thanks for joining us this week.
Yes, sir.
Our market segment this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Keep up with these volatile commodity markets at farmfutures.com. It's time to dig into these volatile markets. Joining us this week is Matt Bennett, CEO of agmarket.net. Mr. Bennett, thanks for joining us this week.
Oh, absolutely, Mike. Thanks for having me.
It has been an interesting week in the grains. Of course, traders are all looking ahead to Monday's quarterly grain stocks and acreage reports. Matt, on the acreage front, what are you expecting to see out of the USDA come Monday?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing on acreage. Typically, when you come out with this June planted acreage report, that's the number everyone looks at. We know we're going to probably talk stocks here in a minute. You don't want to ignore those. But as far as acreage goes, 95.3 is what you came out with for intentions. We knew that economics sure looked good for corn versus beans. Now, I'm not saying economics look great because neither one of them really were a beauty queen, quite frankly. Yes, you probably lost some acres in that Ohio down into the Delta area. That's been talked about quite a bit, but Mike, I'll tell you what, the planting pace was so brisk in northern Illinois, Iowa, into Nebraska and the Dakotas. I've got to think we actually picked up a few more acres. And the growers that we've talked to, we feel like we'll actually be a little bit above that planting intentions number. So our official estimate's 95.8, whereas on soybeans, we're down to 83.2. We kind of feel like if you're going to pick up a few corn acres, you're probably doing it at the expense of soybeans. So those are our official estimates for Monday. I don't know that we get wildly too far away from the planting intentions number, but that's where we're at right now.
That makes a lot of sense. And of course, you mentioned quarterly grain stocks. We'll be watching for those on Monday as well. As you look back on the corn side in particular, Matt, over this past year, demand seems like it's been pretty strong. Do you think that will be reflected in Monday's numbers?
Yeah, I do. Demand's been fantastic. I mean, what do you do whenever you try to probe for lower prices? You're trying to get more demand going. We've got all the demand that we actually need right now. And so people are scratching their heads saying, hey, with a 136 carry, I mean, what in the world are we doing here? Why are we looking at such low prices? And I think a lot of it has to do with managed money's had no interest in owning corn. You look at this huge safrinha crop, it got upgraded again this year, or this last week. I mean, bottom line is right now, usage is good in the U.S. Stocks are going to be fairly tight, both old crop and new. But whenever you get right down to it, most people feel like we're going to have a big enough crop to be able to get by out until next year. So hopefully we get some sort of a bullish stocks report. I'm not expecting anything wildly bullish, but I do think demand's been awfully strong.
Are there anything producers need to do Monday morning come market open, Matt, to prepare for this, or do we just let it ride at this point?
Well, I think most people are down to gambling bushels on old crop stocks, quite frankly. And if that's the case, then in my opinion, you just kind of sit here and see what happens. I mean, you've ridden this thing down. This is like a death spiral, Mike. This has been a terrible market that we've dealt with the last several days. I want to kind of wait and see, hey, does the end user decide they're going to use basis to get a hold of some bushels? We're hearing some huge overs whenever we get out into the east. Is that going to filter its way into Illinois, for instance? I think it's possible. So if I've got gambling bushels, I'm probably just going to sit and wait and see. Hey, maybe Mother Nature will throw a wild card at us finally.
That's true. You mentioned that safrinha crop. How big are they expecting now out of Brazil for their corn crop?
Yeah, AgriConsult came out this week, which is a South American-based consulting agency, and they went up 10.5 million metric tons, to 123.3. And so your overall crop size, you're talking substantially above the USDA's latest figure of, I believe, around 129. And so, with that being the case, you're really looking at some maybe tougher waters as far as U.S. corn exports. We've been wildly competitive the last year. We've continued to run well ahead of pace for this marketing year. But for next marketing year, that's where you start to run into some problems if Brazil has that much corn. Very interestingly, they came out this week and actually bumped up corn usage or ethanol usage in their fuel to 30%. That's a big deal for them. So I think usage will be very strong down there. But yeah, their cash prices down there are plummeting due to this huge crop.
All right, lots to watch here in the grains as we get deeper into summer, but we'll be back for more with Matt Bennett of agmarket.net. Our market segments this week are brought to you by Farm Futures. Keep up with this volatile commodity market at farmfutures.com. And we're back talking about these markets with Matt Bennett of agmarket.net. Matt, we're going to see some action in the grains next week after those reports. We're also continuing to watch action here in the cattle market. It looks like it's, to me, getting a little toppy here over recent weeks. Is that your expectation?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Mike, every time that we go up and make a new high, we kind of back off, then we go up and make a new high again. And right now, it just seems like there's not the enthusiasm to buy this cattle market up like we did before. Now, we never really got convergence. I mean, a lot of folks said, hey, we need to see these cash prices catch up, or the board catch up to cash. And I mean, shoot, over the last couple of weeks, we've heard some 242s and 244s as far as fats were concerned. I mean, just extraordinary money, especially considering a lot of these folks are feeding them to 1,600 pounds and even higher. And so per animal, I mean, it's just an incredible amount of money that's been generated. And so a lot of these guys have done well, but you look at the funds, that's who's really controlling what you and I are talking about, which is the board. The board really wasn't able to achieve convergence. I don't know what it would take to get it. And the thing is, if I'm a fund and I've been long cattle for the last several months, I don't care what contract I've traded, I've made money. And so I got to think that some of these guys are saying, hey, we entered into grilling season, huge demand. We know that. Fundamentals are still awful strong. But on the backside of this, what do we think is going to happen? Maybe we ought to go ahead and lighten up. And I think that's a little bit of what you're feeling there whenever you say that this cattle market seems a little top heavy, is that the funds, they've been shedding just a little bit of length here.
That makes sense. Now, Matt, you mentioned those fundamentals are strong. And of course, a key component of that are the values at retail or wholesale for this beef. Box beef values continued this past week to scream higher. Consumers are still willing to buy at these prices, it seems.
Absolutely. I mean, it's that time of year again, right? I mean, if you're going to go out on Friday night and grill out, if you've got enough money in your pocket, you're probably going to go ahead and opt for that ribeye. It's nothing against a pork producer. It just seems like that's what people like to do, is they want to grill beef over the weekend, hamburgers, and it's just kind of the way it works. But yes, box beef has just been on fire. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're buying, whether it's box beef all the way up to the live animal. I mean, people who are buying freezer beef, for instance, you tell them, hey, it's going to be a lot more than what it's been over the last couple of years. I mean, it's just the way that it is. They say, I don't care. I just want to get my hands on it, And so demand is phenomenal. Okay. And numbers are not great. But again, what's sustainable? I mean, that's the thing, is what's sustainable. And can you go wildly higher here on this cattle market? I think you could still go higher, but if I'm a cattle producer here, if I've got several pins of fats, if you want to be bullish, that's fine. Let's be bullish in a smart way, though, and at least have some sort of protection under us, because I always say the door couldn't be wide enough for everyone to get out. It's kind of the gate in this instance when you're talking cattle. I don't know if you can get the gates wide enough to get all these funds out at the same time. You could see a $30, $40 sell-off pretty rapidly, even with good fundamentals.
Would you be looking to make some hedges out into this fall, maybe all the way to December, Matt, or are you sticking close by for now?
Yeah, I'm going to stick close by for now. I mean, if you look at the board, everything's up front here. And so if I'm going to see the board just completely capitulate, it's probably going to happen as much on the front month as is going to happen on anything. So I don't want to spend a ton of money hedging here. But if I've got some length, if I've got a bunch of fats, I'm going to at least have something underneath myself. And what I want to do, I want to have it under that front month that's wildly ahead of the deferreds.
Put it where the money is. That makes a lot of sense. Matt Bennett of agmarket.net, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Absolutely, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Well, we don't let Greg Solier out of the studio very often, and when we do, we make sure he's still at work. He joins us now while on vacation. Greg, thank you so much for talking about the weather with us. What are you watching here in the Pacific Northwest this next week?
Hey, Mike, I got a weather station at age 14. I haven't had a day off since. So what's the difference anyway? Down here in the Florida Keys, where there's actually a little tropical action trying to get going. We'll touch on that here in just a second. But into the Pacific Northwest, we've had a couple of weak systems move on through onto the maps and charts. And that's the story for the early portion of the week. A fast-moving feature, one out of the northern and central plains. We've had some storms at times across the Dakotas. And boy, those rains have been significant as you get into the Red River Valley of the north, with a weaker system coming on shore as well. But overall, it's a pretty seasonal weather pattern to start. A little drier than we'd like to see through Oregon and Washington State. Those topsoils are a bit depleted. But when we move along to the late portion of the week, unfortunately, no real organized moisture into position at all. Matter of fact, ridging up aloft, we're going to retrograde that hot ridge that dominated the Corn Belt, the plains, and the eastern states, back it up to the west. There'll be a weak boundary moving through the northern plains, another one up through Washington State, and little, if any, organized precipitation otherwise expected into the northwest with a warmer, hotter, drier weather pattern. Watch the increasing fire risk out there in the days and weeks to come. Otherwise, early to middle parts of the week in the southwestern states, little boundary hung up over the southern Rockies, the southern high plains, and boy, they have been hit with big-time moisture flooding in through New Mexico, big hailstones from there up through areas of Nebraska. The beat goes on there with a weak system up aloft that may even sprinkle or bring some low clouds and fog into parts of southern California, the San Diego area early on in the week. But it's the monsoon season that is well underway as well, embedded all that, Mike, with showers and thunderstorms, daytime heating, downpours, lightning potential too, and the heaviest of the storms across Colorado, New Mexico, and points out of the east and out across the Pacific, Mike. El Nino still into play, and signs of developing kind of a tropical-like weather system there, but off of Baja as the week wears on.
As you look up to the northern Corn Belt, Greg, you mentioned the severe weather across that region last week. Do you see more of that coming in the next week?
Yeah, I tell you what, last week, 6+ inches of rain, not far from your neighborhood out there in the parts of central and northern Iowa. Maps and charts do have the last in a series of those weather systems moving on through the northern and western Corn Belt. If you've been on the shorter side of the moisture pattern, parts of Illinois, Indiana, southern Wisconsin, still the worst drought areas there back in the western Corn Belt. Your wish will be granted with first heat, humidity, then storms on the move from northwest to southeast. But note the drier air, still warm, but lower humidity dew points across the northern plains. That will be shifting to the east and south with a cold front to come on through the middle part of the week and a far more comfortable weather pattern for the Corn Belt areas. There's heat retrogrades back to the west, and so do the storms out of Big Sky Country and Wyoming. Boy, I tell you what, the spring wheat is struggling there. The storms have been bountiful across Kansas and Nebraska. They're back into play, too. On through the southern plains as we move through the early to middle parts of the week. Still some tropical downpours across the Texas Gulf Coast. It's still wet through the Rio Grande and through New Mexico with a monsoon set up there. We're still tapped into Pacific moisture with hot, dry weather to start in the Ohio Valley and the Delta. But later in the week, showers and thunderstorms, the passage of a cool front, and the heat centers itself on the central and southern plains, Mike, back in the southwest. But tempered by high humidity, high dew points, and scattered showers and thunderstorms. More tropical rains at the mouth of the Rio Grande.
Take us all the way to the Atlantic. Greg, what do you see across the eastern seaboard?
For the most part, it is an active weather pattern for the northeast into the eastern and southern Corn Belt with showers and thunderstorms. Welcome moisture there. And drying out with lower humidity in the northern and western complex, and a delightful go of it with outdoor work in mind. Scouting the fields, a far more comfortable air mass by the middle late parts of the week with humidity and dew points down. A couple of showers and thunderstorms northeast and some storms back west of the Missouri. Early in the week, the tropics a bit more active, a little something coming out of the eastern Gulf, enhancing the afternoon showers and thunderstorms through Florida. They need the moisture along and south of I-4. More wet weather across the heart of the Cotton Belt. Late in the week, little change. That maybe developing tropical system in the eastern part of the Gulf will head on northward. Scattered showers and thunderstorms there in through Florida along the Gulf Coast. Plenty of heat and humidity otherwise along and west of the Mississippi.
Closed captioning this week is brought to you by Farm Progress. Their team of experts reports on innovative solutions and essential information for your farm business. Visit farmprogress.com to stay updated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You know, we've talked a few times on today's episode about the severe weather breakout across so much of the country this past week. And one of the hardest hit locales was North Dakota. They were impacted by a slow-moving but severe windstorm that included tornadoes and did lots of damage on the ground. We're joined now by Jesse Allen. He serves as the Vice President for National Ag Content with the Farm and Ranch Media, or FARM. And Jesse, I know you spend a lot of time up in the Dakotas. You've got a lot of farmer connections up in that neck of the woods. Fill us in on this storm. How widespread was the damage across North Dakota?
Thanks for having me on, Mike. Definitely a devastating event that rolled through this past weekend in North Dakota. And from talking with folks and surveying the damage, a lot of it was focused, the majority of it kind of east of Jamestown towards Fargo and into northwest Minnesota towards the Bemidji area, kind of along that I-94 corridor, if folks are familiar with that. And a lot of wind damage, significant tornadoes as well. We did have 3 lives lost in the Enderlin area from a tornado. North Dakota Governor Kelly Armstrong, he declared a state of emergency for the entire state and also activated the state emergency operations plan in response. And there's a lot of reports, Mike, that somewhere between 50 to 80 million bushels of storage capacity was wrecked, and it could take quite a long time to rebuild that. I know a lot of farmers are still kind of surveying the damage, but a lot of it, at least right now, sounds structural in nature on the agriculture side, Mike.
Now, as you've been talking to your connections across that area, Jesse, have you heard any on-the-ground stories? Have you seen any of the images from that area?
I actually have seen some images and got a few sent to me, texted me from a farmer in the region, kind of north and east of Jamestown area. And really, again, a lot of it just, you could see the devastation from those horrendous straight line winds. And to that point I made about the storage capacity, a lot of the talk from farmers has been, this could be a potential issue when we get to the harvest season. I talked to Justin Sherlock. He's the president of the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association. He echoed that sentiment, saying that harvest could be very tough with some of that lost storage capacity in the eastern part of the state. He also told me, Mike, in terms of crop damage, a lot of farmers are still surveying to see if there is any damage to some of that crop that has emerged. A decent amount of it is a little behind this year, so it sounds like the crop damage may have been minimal. A few reports of maybe some soybean replanting going on here this weekend, but by and large, it sounds like most of the impact is from a structural standpoint.
All right. Well, hopefully those growers can get those grain facilities back up and running. I remember when that derecho came through Iowa in August of 2020. We saw similar devastation, at least to grain facilities. But those contractors were able to get rocking and rolling pretty quick and start to at least get some of them rebuilt by harvest. Hopefully, we can see the same thing take place across eastern North Dakota, Jesse, in the coming weeks.
Yeah, that is the hope with everything that has gone through there. And to your point about when that derecho went through Iowa, we saw some similar types of devastation. And it's going to take quite a long time, I think, for growers in the region to understand the economic toll and much more. But hopefully, I know cleanup has been underway the last several days. And as one farmer told me that they've dealt with this and they'll roll with the punches and hopefully try to make the best of it here throughout the rest of the growing season.
Absolutely. I suppose folks on the plains are aware that storms are a risk out here in that part of the country, and they're used to helping one another across the ag industry. Now, Jesse, weather isn't the only thing farmers are dealing with here as we roll into the midsummer time frame. We've also seen a big pullback in prices for corn over the past several weeks, soybeans recently, and of course on Monday we've got that couple of USDA reports. You host the daily market show Market Talk, digging in with market experts for an hour each day. What are you anticipating when Monday's reports roll around, and how will you be covering those reports?
Well, to your point, Mike, I know a lot of producers, traders, very frustrated with the market action recently. December corn, for instance, has broken through some key support levels, and a lot of traders I've been talking to are pointing to maybe another leg lower ahead of those USDA acreage and grain stocks numbers on Monday. And it just feels like fund managers have really been beating up these grain markets here with a lack of a bullish story to help things out. I know the trade is expecting June 1st U.S. corn stocks to potentially fall around 7% on the year, but we could see soybean stocks at a 5-year high for the date as we look at the pre-report estimates. I know on the planted acreage side, there's talk of maybe a slight uptick in corn acres nationwide. That could maybe go with the theme of we had a pretty good spring, and that might have allowed producers to add a few extra corn acres on what is already projected to be a very large crop. In terms of the markets, we know those reports are always very volatile, and we'll be covering it on Market Talk on Monday after the reports. I'll talk with John Heimberg from Total Farm Marketing about it, and really throughout the week on Market Talk and AOA, Agriculture of America, as well as the other show I host. We're going to be talking about these reports and kind of trying to figure out whatever ends up being the market reaction. I think the biggest thing is we don't know. It's always an unknown with a USDA report, Mike, and for producers, they're just going to have to buckle up and hopefully have a plan in place to manage their risk after the reports.
That is a great point, Jesse. And folks, I hope you were listening. Jesse hosts Agriculture of America, the national radio show, in addition to Market Talk, his nationally syndicated program. Check both of those out there on every day. Fantastic resources for those of us in agriculture. Jesse Allen, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Welcome back, everyone, to This Week in Agribusiness. We're going to travel now with Max Armstrong back to Northwest Missouri. He's been having a conversation with grower David Palmer for our Plan Smart, Grow Smart series with BASF.
You know, some people will talk about the corporation, its product pipeline, its research.
When I ask you about BASF, you talk about the people in the field.
It's all about the people. There you go. That's where it starts. If they're doing their job, the rest of it makes it a lot easier for the rest of the world. I have a lot of faith in them.
Who is your BASF representative?
Bill Hayen is the one that comes and does ours, and then above him is Lexi. I usually call our fertilizer dealer, Mark Hoover, and he gets a hold of Lexi or whoever. But Bill lives over east of here, and he's good about coming. The girls will drop a pin and say, Bill, you get over this way, look at this field, and he'll look at it, and he'll call us or say, hey, you got a problem, we need to do this, this, and this, or he'll come by and we'll visit about it. But they just have been really good, and I've never had that much help before.
How long have you been in this business?
35 years.
Holy cow. Yeah. That makes you a seasoned veteran.
I guess.
You had some ups and downs through those 35 years.
We've been in Northwest Missouri coming on 27 years. And I suppose we've been doing the business with Dave and Sally for probably 26 of those. So it's more deeper than just customers with most of our growers. So, and especially Dave and Sally, we're pretty good friends.
What's the fungicide application season look like for you? How do you work with the growers to manage that responsibility when time is of the essence?
We don't do a lot of corn ourselves. We hire that done, aerial application. Kurt's Aviation out of Mountain City does all that. We coordinate with them. We talk to the growers, get the fields lined up. We send the maps to Kurtz's, and they get all that stuff done on corn. We do a lot of ground rig stuff on soybeans, but still a lot of plain stuff too on the fungicide side of it. So that time of year we're out. We want to be done. So we depend on those guys to do a lot of that.
That Agriculture Air Force has been pretty important over the years, hasn't it?
It has. You know, the aerial application's gotten huge in the last 5 to 10 years. You know, we do more and more fungicide, corn and soybeans every year. You know, we're seeing corn side, the yields, not huge bumps in yields, but soybeans, we're seeing some pretty good yield bumps using fungicide.
An example or two?
You know, 3 to 5 bushels, pretty common. And we've seen up to 10, 12 bushel on fungicides on soybeans. We have a very good relationship with our growers. You know, we've always told our growers, you need something, you call us, we'll take care of it. And they know that.
Where do you see it going in the future? You know, as you've had this wonderful path, David, what looks like the path ahead?
The boys taking it over, and hopefully my grandchildren coming into the operation someday. That's my goal, is to have them in it and being alive to see it. That's the end.
Don't you feel blessed to have had this wonderful run you've had?
Yeah, sure do, sure do.
Thank you, Max, and thanks to David Palmer. Folks, if you'd like to see our full series, visit the website, plansmartgrowsmart.com.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier returns now with his extended farm weather forecast for the country.
Well, Greg Solier's back. He joins us from Key Largo, Florida, with a look at what's to come in the week ahead. And Greg, how about that precipitation? Who's going to see what?
Well, my friend, we've got rain actually down here in Florida, and they really need it in some of the worst dry, drought-ridden areas. The tropics trying to get a little more active in the Gulf. The Western Atlantic, of course, we had the first named storm earlier last week, Andrea, in the central parts of the Atlantic moving away. So far, so good on the tropical weather season. That'll change later and through July. Under the precipitation charts, here we go. And there's more moisture back into play early in the week across the heart of the eastern and southern Corn Belt. Later in the week across the western sections, some folks are well watered down. Others need more rain. And if you can stay away from the severe end, boy, things are looking pretty good. Boy, that Iowa bean crop is already blooming and flowering in some parts of the western Corn Belt. That's how advanced those folks are. Look, note the flooding rain in the southwestern states. That's monsoon moisture and Pacific moisture. The tropical lows, well, there's one coming out of the eastern Gulf. It might be a depression, weak storm up to the southeastern states, more wet weather in the Cotton Belt, and maybe another one forming in the far west and southwestern Atlantic later on into the week, and just spotty moisture otherwise into the Pacific Northwest, Mike.
What do you see for temperatures as we get to the week of July 7th?
And here we go, up and running with some cool down for the northern and eastern Corn Belt. Look at the below average readings in the southwest. That's attributed to this. the moisture, the monsoon setup on the precipitation chart, widespread as well across the heartland, the plains, the Corn Belt, wet weather in the southeast, and a couple of weak tropical systems will enhance the rain down across the southeastern states.
How about the week of the 14th? Do you see any big changes?
Here we go with the heat. Not much to really speak of. It's confined to the western states. Temperatures about normal. Same with crop growth and development. Northern and eastern Corn Belt. Southeastern states, a little bit of average. Still some wet weather issues into areas of the southwest, including West Texas and down through New Mexico. Because of that, monsoon moisture, a healthy, robust one. Showers and thunderstorms from the upper Midwest, the eastern seaboards, and more tropical rain they needed to ease the drought down through Florida.
Take us into that third week of July. What do you see?
Here comes the heat in the Pacific Northwest. The northern plains still a bit below average over the southwestern part of the country. Heat builds into the western Corn Belt areas, and showers and thunderstorms continue southwest. Much of the northern and western Corn Belt and the plains in the eastern states, and a couple of tropical systems bear watching in the western Atlantic.
Our Farm Progress Update is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of heavy-duty grain carts and make the most of your harvest season. Visit brandt.ca for more. Well, on Monday, we will get some big reports from the USDA. We'll be talking acreage and quarterly grain stocks, and a lot of traders will be paying close attention. In addition, the staff at Farm Futures Magazine will be paying close attention. And joining us now is Senior Editor Bruce Blythe. Bruce, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
As you look ahead to Mondays, let's talk acreage report first. What is the expectation of traders out there here in America?
Well, based on analyst estimates, the corn figure is expected to rise just a touch from what USDA projected in March. We're looking for a number around 93.35 million acres of corn. That's up from the March estimate by about 24,000 acres. That would still be a 12-year high, highest since 2013. And soybeans are expected to be up a bit as well. Average estimate is 83.66 million acres. That would be up from 83.5 in March, down about 4% from last year. So the analyst expectations suggest they don't see major movement either way, but we know USDA can often throw us curveballs. Past 4 years, the corn number in June exceeded the estimate in March, while soybeans, it was the opposite. The soybean number in June was below the March estimate. So traders are preparing for a number of scenarios here, and this is one of the more impactful reports of the year. This is based on 64,000 farmer surveys conducted the first 2 weeks of June. So a lot is riding on Monday.
It certainly is. We're going to get these updates. And I know that the trade is curious about the wet weather over in the eastern Corn Belt. Is that something you're hearing about, potential acreage shifting there in the eastern belt?
That is definitely a dynamic the trade is following closely. Ohio and other eastern Corn Belt states just got relentless rainfall all spring, and they were way delayed on their planting. I think they have largely caught up this month, but that's one of the major questions hanging over this report is to what extent might that wet eastern Corn Belt weather affected the corn and soybeans numbers? Could many farmers have switched from corn to soybeans, as they often do if planting is delayed? We're still seeing some pretty high corn numbers, though, close to 97 million acres by some estimates.
Wow.
And I think Monday's report will go a long way to help answer these questions.
Man, lots to watch here as the season goes ahead. And of course, you'll have a full breakdown of these reports over at farmfutures.com after they come out.
That's right.
Thank you, Bruce.
Now on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. Now in the summer weeks, you have a great choice every weekend, it seems, of great antique tractor shows to attend. I want to keep on your radar screen the biggest one in America. It's held only every other year. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Lundell Plastics. Protect your crop and seed handling equipment. And spend less time on repairs and maintenance with the products of Lundell Plastics. LundellPlastics.com. The biennial Half Century of Progress show is coming quickly, less than 8 weeks away at Rantoul, Illinois, where you'll see a variety of interesting equipment, harvesting equipment. You won't see things like this working in the field, a cotton picker, but you will see the corn picking, the soybean harvest going on. Old trucks are a part of that show as well. Grain trucks, bread trucks have been there. Various brands will be featured. The International 1206 will be in the spotlight. No, they don't have to be finely restored. This movie star tractor 1206 will be there again from the movie In the Heat of the Night. And the tractor ride will start it all off the morning of the 21st. I'll lead the ride with my 560. They are full days, they are busy days. The Half Century of Progress show, Rantoul, Illinois, the weekend just ahead of the Farm Progress show at Decatur. The dates for the Half Century show, August 21st through the 24th. Let's go to Mark Stock now, who joins us with his weekly Big Iron Auctions report.
Well, hello, Max. We're rounding out the end of June and into July. Happy 4th of July, everyone. The auction results from last week's auctions are available for registered bidders to view on bigiron.com. Last week was a record number of items and viewers from all across North America. We would like to thank everybody for using Big Iron Auctions to sell and buy their quality equipment. In addition to all of the ag equipment that we sell, we also do a lot of business with utility companies selling their fleet vehicles and selling construction equipment. Plus, the upcoming classic and collector car sale in the middle of July captures attention from people all across the country. And let's not forget about the real estate that is sold. On Wednesday, July the 2nd, Sangamon County, Illinois land will sell 120 acres. This land is located 1 mile west of Chatham, Illinois. Also on Wednesday, July the 2nd, Brett Johansson Haying Retirement Sale in South Dakota features a late model Kubota tractor with a loader, telescoping wheel loader, John Deere round balers, and hay handling equipment. And Max, we're looking forward to the Farm Progress auction and Husker Harvest Days auction coming up in August and September. We wish everyone a very safe and happy 4th of July.
Our FFA chapter tribute is brought to you by Gehringoff. Check out the new XFR 50 Draper with 3 times more flexibility than the closest competitor at Gehringoff.com. Gehringoff, proudly built in the American heartland. This week, we're getting to know Lainey Andrews. She's serving as the South Dakota State FFA Treasurer for this year. And Lainey, I've got to ask, did you grow up on a farm there in South Dakota?
I did, yes. We raise corn and soybeans, and then we also have 3 pig barns. So Dad and I actually just were loading pigs last night. So
it's keeping plenty busy there on the farm, and yet you still had time to serve FFA, of course, chapter and now state leadership. What was it that made you want to be a part of the leadership team of the South Dakota FFA?
Well, really going back to my membership, to being a chapter officer and a district officer, there was such a profound impact that the state officers had on me, and I really wanted to make that impact on members alike. And you meet with so many different amazing individuals, and you really see the passion that drives them. And agriculture is obviously an industry that's near and dear to my heart, but it's just been such a wonderful opportunity.
Well, that is fantastic. And of course, you'll be serving those South Dakota FFA members all of this next school year. And then afterwards, do you hope to find a career in the ag industry?
Yes, I hope to be an ag teacher for a while, and then I plan on doing something political, doing some like ag lobbying, or being a lawyer for a large ag company.
We certainly need a lot of advocates out there working on behalf of agriculture across this country, and FFA is a great place to build that experience and get to know the folks who can help you going forward. Lainey Andrews, thank you so much for speaking with us this week.
Thank you for having me.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by AGI, supporting your expertise with industry-leading grain handling, storage, conditioning, and monitoring solutions. AGI, we're right there with you. Jed Colby joins us now with a way to take your spraying to the next level.
There's been so much talk in the industry in terms of the latest technology. And one of the big things is See and Spray. That's a camera that sees a weed and a sprayer that then sprays the weed. Craig, talk a little bit about how you guys demoed the system last year and now you own the system.
Yep, so our John Deere dealership had a demo unit out last year, and we were able to use that on soybeans. We did 2-pass system, and it worked really well. We're spraying 40 to 60% on the first pass, applied, and then we came back the second time. We're spraying 20 to 30% of the field. So huge savings there. When I'm running the sprayer, it never gets old watching it do its thing. Spraying just the weed, and I just get excited because it's technology that's here. We can use it, and it's good for the environment. We're using less chemicals, and it's a good phase for agriculture, and I like using the technology that we have available.
Craig, what would you tell someone that hasn't had a chance to see it outside of a farm show?
Yeah, I would say, if you have a chance to demo it, or go out and just witness it for yourself, I would say that's the best way to get exposed to it and just see how you think you could implement that on your farm if it's something that you want to use.
I noticed also you did it right when you moved to a self-propelled sprayer. Talk a little bit about that trailer. That thing looks awesome.
Yeah, so that was about a 2-month project over the winter. Me and my brother did a lot of the work on that. We can hold 8 shuttles of bulk chemical on there, and they all hook to a automated fill system, which is the Surefire Quick Draw.
Well, Craig, I appreciate you taking some time from your busy spring here. Nice to see you got all done with soybeans today, so that's a good thing, right?
Yep, that's right.
For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Well, folks, stick around. When we come back, we're going to visit with YouTube farming sensation Brian Brown of Brian's Farming Videos. Leave it here. Well, folks, a wet spring over much of the eastern Corn Belt has made it a challenge for growers in that region to get their crops in and get them up looking well. Recently, I had the chance to see that firsthand by visiting with Brian Brown in Ohio.
We're here in southern Ohio. We grow corn, beans, and wheat. We've been farming in this location since 1929.
This growing season here in 2025, Brian, has certainly been challenging, at least to the start of the year. What have you seen here in Ohio? How has it impacted your planting progress?
Yeah, so kind of isolated to a fairly small pocket in southern Ohio. We've had a lot of moisture, more so than a lot of areas. So getting crops in the ground has really been a struggle this year.
From a fungicide perspective, Brian, when did you start applying fungicides to your crops?
Well, we probably started putting on fungicides. We were probably talked into it around 2012, and we started noticing immediate results. So we have a very high gray leaf spot stress here, and that really helped mitigate that quite a bit.
What fungicides are you using on the farm today?
So we use Miravis Ace and Miravis Neo.
How has Miravis Neo given you an edge, have you noticed?
We've been able to keep those leaves nice and green when they need to be, and really help to increase our bushels that way. In beans, we've also really noticed frog eye leaf spot. We struggle with that, and we've noticed a huge difference. 10 bushels, which in beans is a lot bigger deal than 10 bushels in corn. So.
It certainly is. And as you think about the seasons and when to apply that fungicide, do you wait until you have disease pressure actively happening, or is it a preventative measure for you here on the farm?
So that used to be our approach, and now we've kind of started to try to use it more as a preventative measure, maybe get out there a little early and then come back in right, especially with corn, right as we're starting to tassel.
Brian, you're not just a farmer. You're also very active on social media, particularly on YouTube with Brian's Farming Videos. How'd you get into that space?
Well, in 2018, I was kind of just messing around with the camera. I was watching a lot of non-farm vloggers, and I was like, well, that looks kind of interesting. And I kind of tried to start doing what they were doing. I realized I was absolutely terrible at it. But trying to get better at that, I was trying to put together like an outdoor YouTube channel, because that was something I was passionate about off the farm. So to try to get better at that, I started filming a wheat harvest one year. And I was like, I'm gonna be doing this every day. This will be perfect. I can get a lot of reps in trying to be a vlogger. Well, I started posting those, and I realized that at that time, I didn't have any name recognition or anything. So the only people who were watching it were family and friends, and I realized they didn't know what we were doing. My own mother-in-law, she had no idea why we did what we did, when we did. Every year I'd get asked, when can we go on vacation? I'm like, well, if you want to go on vacation, these are terrible months to go. And I kind of realized that if people that I'm close with that know me well don't know much about agriculture, a lot of the people, especially in this area, I mean, as you can see, we're kind of on the edge of farm country. don't know a whole lot about either. I was kind of thinking maybe if they learn, they'll get out of my way when I'm driving down the highway.
Have they been getting out of your way?
No, it hasn't really helped there.
Brian, before we let you go, you mentioned the partnership you've had with Syngenta, the work you've done with Miravis Neo. What's it been like working with the Syngenta team? Have they been helpful, the personnel on Syngenta staff, to get you pointed in the right direction?
Yes, they've always worked with our supplier. I've talked to their agronomist several times, and yeah, he's always been very helpful. Anytime we had questions, he's always had answers. So.
If folks are curious more about Syngenta or Miravis Neo, where would you send them?
I'd send them to SyngentaUS/Miravis Neo.
Thank you, Brian. It was a real treat to get to explore his part of Ohio and see how the crops were faring as they come out of the ground for this growing season. And thank you for joining us here today. We hope you'll catch us next time right here for This Week in Agribusiness. Have a great week, everybody. This Week in Agribusiness is recorded in the Strauss Studios. For more than 70 years and 3 generations, Strauss has been manufacturing high-performance German-engineered workwear, work boots, and safety equipment. Prepare for the next growing season at Strauss.com.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.